Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the meeting of the Human Resources and Administration Committee of the Board of Regents. I'd like to call the meeting in order. Rachel, can you please call the roll?
Yes, good afternoon. Chair Japinen,
Present.
Regent Balducci, absence is noted. Regent Cummings is anticipated but may be late this afternoon. Regent James,
Present.
thank you. Regent Wright,
Here.
thank you. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Rachel. I'd like to welcome two guests to our meeting. First is Chris Wetchy. Chris is the Chief Human Resources Officer from Central Connecticut State University and the lead author of our policy we will be discussing today. I'm excited he is able to join us, and I look forward to having Chris as well as all of our CSCU HR leaders participate in future meetings. I'd also like to welcome back Dr. Tam O'Day-Stevens. She'll be providing an update on the important professional development efforts that took place this past academic year. And finally, Jennifer Person, and I talked quite a bit about the importance of utilizing technology with her. And today she's going to talk about how she positively transformed HR outcomes using different technology and streamlining different processes and meaningful customer service. So I'm very excited about that. And I've asked Jen to share pretty much with this committee some of those technical business process improvements that she and her team have implemented and also the impact that these changes have had for our system. Let's do the adoption of the agenda before we get started. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The agenda is adopted. I would also like to call a motion to approve the previous meeting minutes from our November 13th, 2025. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Is there a second? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. All right. I'd also like to call a motion to approve the previous meetings from December 5th, 2025. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. All right. Let's go ahead and step into our action item today. We have one action item on our agenda, and I'd like to turn this over to Jen and Chris to provide some background information on the CSCU policy on volunteers and kick off the discussion. Thank you.
Oh, and welcome, Regent Cummings. We're glad you're able to join us.
Regent Cummings.
I'm
Yeah.
Central, and they gave me an office, so.
But we're glad you're
ready to
able.
go.
We're glad you're able to make it. So one of the policies that we were able to formulate and go through the policy committee is the CSCU policy on volunteers. Chris Wetchy, one of my colleagues, he's from Central Connecticut State University. He was a primary author of this policy. And I'd like Chris to maybe talk briefly about why the policy was needed, what kind of existed before this policy was drafted, and maybe we can answer any questions that you might have about the policy. So Chris, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jen, and thank you, Japinen, for allowing me to be part of the meeting today.
Yes.
As Jen said, I brought this policy forward to Jen's attention at first. I was hired as the CHRO here at Central about 3 years ago. And one of the concerns I had was that there was no policy on volunteers. I went looking for what sort of rules or guidance there was on volunteers, because we do have a number of volunteers on campus. I talked to my colleagues at the other campuses, and really there was no set guidance on this. It was a little bit of a free-for-all on each campus. So after talking to Jen, it was we decided that it might make sense for me to draft something up and at least talk about as a group with the other CHROs to determine if the rules would work and what sort of system would make the most sense. So what I did was we drafted something. I thought it was really important to at least define who a volunteer is, because I think we all have people on campus. There are some that participate in advisory meetings and different committees. Alumni are involved in different aspects of campus, but not all of them need to be deemed volunteers. I think people are giving of their time, but I think we needed to denote who's actually a volunteer under the terms of the policy and might require a background check. And I think that was my primary concern getting into this is we have a lot of volunteers that work with our athletics department, but we do have a number of other volunteers on campus as well. And I was concerned that there was no consistency with background checks and the safety of our students as a result. So really thinking it was important to put a policy together that would define who strictly is a volunteer and under those circumstances would require the background checks to be done. I also thought it was important that we had some sort of tracking mechanism of who a volunteer was on campus, because with the current system, athletics might have had their own list, the academic affairs might have had a list, student affairs might have had a list, but there was no centralized listing of who the volunteers were for accountability purposes. So under this policy, what we're looking to do is to have human resources be that central repository of who the volunteers are, because we're the ones that are going to be running the background checks. So we'll be the ones to best know and be able to maintain that ultimate list with all of our departments. I thought it was also important that we have a policy that indicated how the volunteers were going to be supervised. And then ultimately, it was important to make sure that our volunteers know that they're still bound by all of the policies that are set by the Board of Regents as well as the Code of Conduct. Without specifying that in the policy, it could be assumed, but I think it could also easily be challenged if we didn't outline that, that they are subject to those same rules. And I think, you know, we take on volunteers, we hope that their intentions are good, but sometimes they're not. And I think it just gives us a little bit more force when there is a problem to be able to handle that appropriately if there needs to be an exit of the volunteer. So I think that sort of gives you a little bit of a background of why we created the policy. Working through the policy committee with Cameron Liston, this did undergo a lot of revision. We got a lot of feedback. I think each of the campuses quickly realized how important it was to have a policy of this nature. So we're excited to bring it forward to you. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
And one thing I might add is that there is a form that is mentioned in the policy. Cameron did bring to our attention that we need to get that form reviewed as well and get the form implemented. But when if this committee votes to move this forward in May to the full board, we'll have the form ready to accompany the policy as well. So I'm sorry.
No, I have a question, and I'm glad to hear that you have a policy, but I'm just curious, in the past, when you have faced some a challenge or a problem with a volunteer, how was it handled?
So I can only speak to what's occurred on Central's campus. I had one situation come up, which is really what prompted me to ask about the policy and realize that there was none. Our athletics department brought it to me as a concern. I think what had happened in the past was each department just sort of handled things on their own because they weren't considered employees, so HR wasn't involved. And I think people were doing a little bit of everything. I don't think there was consistency in how it was handled. In this case, I have a good working relationship with our athletic director, so he brought it to my attention and asked me to help and guide it as if it were an employee issue, and I did handle that situation. I don't know how it was handled in the past because that was the first issue that was brought to my attention. But I guess that's a concern, is that there was no real consistency in how these issues were handled.
There was no consistency, and then there's a liability question too.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Quick question. Do we need to mention that this doesn't apply to the Board of Regents because we're all volunteers too? I mean, is that just taken, for granted? I'm just wondering if we we need to even mention that.
So I would say,
Because I think the clarity of who a volunteer is, all of that's really very, very good. So
That's a good point.
so there is on the, like the very bottom under section F exemptions, it says generally individuals serving on advisory boards, as well as invited speakers or guest lecturers. But I think we should add another bullet there that specifically addresses the Board of Regents. Do you think that would
It's a good note.
help
Thanks.
satisfy that?
Yeah,
yeah, I just don't even know if it's necessary. So
Yeah.
I would check
that was
with
a good question.
the general counsel and
Yeah.
just say, do we even need to mention it? So
Yep.
I'm happy to raise that with general counsel.
Regent Wright, it looks like you're speaking, but you're muted.
I said we should be mentioned somewhere because regardless of whether it's inappropriate behavior on the behalf of a region or whether I think there are some things that protect us in the event that there's litigation against us. So I would, it is a good question for Karen.
Oh, Regent Cummings?
Yeah, I like this discussion. I think it's useful. When I was at Naugatuck, I had a volunteer chemist from a local company tutor my students for about 15 years. And, while I was upfront with with the administration of what I was doing, we really didn't go through any of these types of things, the background checks and whatnot. And my logic was because the tutoring always occurred in a public space, and there was never an opportunity. I was thinking to have a problem. The one thing that I guess I'm worried about is when you have somebody volunteering, you hate to have it appear to have barriers for their, they're volunteering already. We want to make it as easy as possible. I'm wondering if in this, volunteer space, if we dedicate some resources so that when somebody shows up at the door and says, I'd like to volunteer, instead of, setting them off on their way to do a lot of paperwork, have somebody assist them through that background check process so that it's easy. I mean, if you never have one volunteer, you'll never have a bad incident with a volunteer. But I don't know if that's what we want. I just want to make sure that the volunteers feel very, very welcome. And anytime that you put, hurdles in front of them before they can actually help out, I'm afraid we might lose some people, which otherwise might be helpful. So again, anything that we can do to make them feel welcome and to ease their transition into that role as a volunteer.
Yeah, Regent Cummings, that's excellent advice, and I appreciate that because you're right. The volunteers are giving of their time, and if we put up barriers, it's only going to dissuade some people. Some will still be willing, but we don't want to lose their support and their willingness to help out. So I will make sure, I'll talk to my colleagues at the other campuses as well. I think HR needs to take a lead with that because the background check process is going to be managed by our office, and we need to make that as simple as possible for them. But I do think we need to work with the departments that are looking to utilize the volunteers to make the process as easy as well in terms of onboarding them and bringing them into the fold of the community.
And maybe in some ways they'll feel this will help them feel more welcome because it's a little bit more official. HR can put a happy touch on it. So maybe in some ways, having a more streamlined, official process to bring them on and to have a small orientation might actually help in that regard.
yeah, and I think if depending on how you position it, if you streamline the process to make it easy, but at the same time explain that we're doing it really for the protection of, the students, frankly, everyone in the institution, people understand that they recognize that we're in a very different world today. So these things are necessary. It's unfortunate, but necessary. I feel like that every time I go through an airport.
Yeah.
So,
It is hard to argue with the safety of the students, and that's ultimately what our primary concern is. And so it's hard for people to push back on that. But with that said, I think Regent Cummings brings up a good point. We don't want to make this more burdensome than it needs to be to protect the safety of the students.
right. Agreed.
Is there any more
Oh,
questions? No? Okay. Can I have a motion to endorse the CSU policy on volunteers?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Well,
I'm
thank you all for
excited.
allowing me to attend.
Thanks, Chris.
thank you very much, Chris. You're welcome
Yeah,
to
Chris,
Thank
thank
stay.
you.
You're welcome to stay for
Yeah,
the rest of the public
You know
meeting.
what?
yeah, stay for
I'll
the
turn my
whole.
microphone off, but I'll stay a little bit. Yeah, thank you.
Great,
Oh,
thanks.
great. Perfect. Yes. I also want to welcome Felicia Brown. I know she's on. I'm sorry. Didn't see her on there before. She's our new Director of Board Affairs and Associate Board Secretary. So welcome to the Human Resources Committee meeting. Thanks for coming on. Yeah. All right, so we can go ahead and go into our information items. I'm gonna go ahead and pass this to for professional development updates to Tam O'Day Stevens.
Good afternoon, everybody. How's everyone doing this afternoon? I'm going to ask Rachel. Rachel, we have a PowerPoint to share some of the offerings that have occurred over the course of this year. And if we could make the screen bigger so folks could see. First and foremost, I would like to acknowledge Dr. Forrest Helvey, who is our professor and our lead that is assisting the system office with many of these offerings across our system. He has a course release and he is a faculty member in English at Tunx's Community College. He was my director of professional development when I worked over at CT State, and we are lucky enough to have him on a course release for the fall and the spring to assist us with many of these offerings and the organization of many of the programs that we originally offered at CT State, but we are now offering them globally across the system. So I'd just like to say that thank you to him for his hard work and collaboration on all of these programs, because he's the mastermind behind these offerings. If we could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So overall, we have this past year, we have offered 7 AI professional development sessions across the system. We've offered 2 compliance and ethics workshops. I'm going to go into details about all of these. We've offered 3 accessibility and universal design learning workshops and programs. We've offered 3 Leadership Academy programs. We've offered 3 campus partnership workshops, and we have so far, and there's still more coming this semester through June, but we have touched over 2,000 system participants through the entire span of this past year. If we could go to the next slide, Rachel, thank you. So we started offering this year because there's been a lot of interest in AI professional development from our faculty and our staff. And this was our biggest, and these were done virtually. We had a basics for AI in higher education, and we had participation from over 600 individuals virtually. When Forrest first put up the invitation, he's like, Tam, wait till you see the numbers on the first session. So on January 9th, we had crafting your classroom and AI use guidelines. On the 16th, the basics of prompt engineering. And then the 23rd was equitizing your course with AI. And then January 30th was AI resistant assignments. And so they were really classroom focused, but a lot of staff showed up to also engage in these conversations and to learn. And the feedback was outstanding. So then, because the feedback was so outstanding, he said, I'm going to do a 2.0 series later in the spring. And so that's being offered in April through early May. And those 3 sessions are beyond the detector, recognizing authentic student voice in their writing, From suspicion to conversation, navigating AI misuse is the next one that's coming up. And then designing online and hybrid courses for authentic engagement. And so that's the 2.0 or the next round of AI that is coming up virtually. So we will let everyone know what those numbers are in the next round of AI programming that's coming. Next slide, please. We've offered, so we've partnered a lot with HR and with Cameron Liston's shop as well. And with Cameron, we worked with his team on conversations and compliance. With a lot of the new policies that are coming out right now, we wanted to make sure that we were also doing presentations on the various forms of compliance that individuals in the system might be having challenges with. So one of the first sessions that we offered was on January 30th, where we did ethics in CSCU, and we explored ethical considerations for employees through an interactive case scenario involving vendor relationships, conference invitations, and institutional reputational risks. I actually went to the session to observe, and I will tell you, I had a hard time myself with some of the case study questions. So it was really challenging, and the case study was really unique. I'm happy to share the case study with anybody to look at, but it was really challenging, but it was a great discussion with the group. It was a small participant group of 26, but the conversations and the learning was really valuable. We have an upcoming one in late April, which is FERPA. We just put out the FERPA policy, the updated FERPA policy, and we're doing an examination of FERPA obligations for faculty and staff with a focus on practical compliance in instructional and administrative contexts. So that's coming up now with the launch of FERPA. So that's the next offering in the compliance shop. Sorry, I have a little bit of a cough still going on, so I'm gonna take a sip of water.
Tamara, can you once again explain the acronym FERPA for me?
Family Education Rights and Privacy Act.
Got it.
And
Thank
so
you.
that is our compliance, where we need to be cautious about the information that we share with our families regarding any of our data that is related to our students, specifically their academic records and data related to our students on our campuses, including their financial data as well.
Great.
So
Thanks.
we are bound by that. Sorry, I have to stick with the
No,
acronym.
I remember seeing it. I know we've explained it before, but I just had a memory lapse there.
And
No, my apologies.
it also extends to their employment while as a student at our institutions.
The next group of programming that we've been offering is accessibility and universal design for learning. We are bound by federal law right now also for digital accessibility. So we've been keeping a close eye on making sure that we're also meeting our federal obligations. And so in September, I talked last year, I think, about the Escaping Inaccessibility program that is kind of making its way around the system. That is a 6-part program where faculty and staff go around and experience a live action accessibility program. And they go through the different tables where they experience what students would experience in a classroom. And it's really wonderful. So it happened at Capitol and it happened at Middlesex. So in September, we were at Middlesex and then we were again at Capitol. And it was in Middlesex, we had 55 participants and then 25 at Capitol. And then there was an introduction to the UDL workshop in March of 2026. The Office of Disability and Accessibility Service introduced universal design for learning principles to faculty and staff. And for those that don't know what UDL is, it's how we flip the classroom for learning for students, really being engaging with students, flipping the classroom so that we're doing practices that really meet the needs of today's students' learning, making sure that we're doing our assessments and the learning for students the way that they need to learn in our classrooms. Gone are the days of death by PowerPoint, as I used to say. And we need to engage in classrooms where students are experiencing classrooms in a way that they are really engaged. They're doing hands-on things. And so that is what universal design really focuses on, is having students really learn in a space that speaks to who they are as learners in today's environments. And there were 73 participants for that. And we're going to try and do the video. We have a promo video now for escaping inaccessibility. So I don't know if we can get that going. And if we cannot get it going well and large, then I will send it out to everyone on this meeting so you can see it after. So we just hit the.
I'm hitting it now, Tim. Let me see if I can just stop share and bring it back up. If you'll give me 1 sec.
Thank you, Rachel. It's a really good video, and I want to thank the Middlesex Digital Media, Phil Fox, for the creation. He brought 2 students to Capitol to create this video, and it's really neat that we had students also help us create this video.
Good.
I'm probably not going to get the sound.
Are you not hearing the sound?
No.
Oh, okay. Let me just let me try one more thing if I could. 1 second while sharing.
Thank you, Rachel.
Good?
Yeah.
Let me tell you a little about the program. It invites faculty and staff to sit in the seat of our students, to experience firsthand the real-life obstacles they may face. Through an interactive and engaging format, participants learn practical ways to respond, adapt, and reimagine how we support members of our communities so that everyone feels valued and welcomed.
So today was Escaping Inaccessibility, a fun and unique way to learn about accessibility challenges. We had 6 different challenges set up, and everybody came, had a blast, and learned something new. So we've been traveling around from campus to campus, making our rounds and trying to spread awareness about accessibility, making sure that our faculty, staff, and even students are aware of different ways to create accessible spaces for everybody. The table that I'm at is about document accessibility, and just seeing the individuals try to figure out the words that are hidden basically in plain sight, right? But just trying to figure those things out. And it's that aha moment that they get when they figure it out. And those are the things that are going to stick with them.
That's interesting.
So I'd like to commend Debbie Cozier is the brains behind this, and Helena Castellano, they're the lead individuals in accessibility, who first came to me and said, we have this idea and we want to build this out. And then they had reached out to all of these other accessibility leads across the system. So we have Brooks, they work at Eastern, and we have Surbi Patel at Central, and we have reached out, and we have Hillary over at Middlesex. And so we have all of these accessibility leads across the system working in partnership on this program, and they have all come together. But Debbie came up with this idea. She had a smaller version of this, and we've kind of expanded it out and now have created all of these documents and this program, and they just presented it at a national conference. So we're just really proud of the work that the accessibility team is doing and how we're educating faculty and staff differently about how our students show up on our campus and the challenges that they face in the ADA space, because students are coming to our campuses with challenges, and we want to make sure that we are responding in a contemporary way and that we're sitting in the seat of our students and understanding some of the challenges that they're experiencing. Next slide, please.
Oh, just 1 second, sorry.
No, all good. So the next area that I'm going to talk about is our CSCU Leadership Academy, which has technically three parts to it. We have an emerging leaders, a continuing leaders, and a senior leaders platform. So this year we were able to offer our Emerging Leaders program and our Senior Leaders program. Our Senior Leaders program was offered in January. It's a 3-part series for senior leaders across our system, and it goes in 3 sections. They start out with a level 1, which is an emotional intelligence level. The middle section is about conflict and handling difficult situations in the work environment with employees. And then the third part, which was in partnership with Felix Rodriguez, who works in the compliance shop with Cameron and his team. And I worked on that third part, and he did a presentation about managing evaluations and also the continuous improvement process in the HR space with employees. And so that's the senior leadership program, and that's how it's built. So they do a virtual session, and then they come for an in-person all day with the senior leaders program. The emerging leaders program is for our middle managers, and that goes over almost a 6-week period of time. And Forrest runs that program. It's a multi-session cohort program for mid-level career professionals across the system. We had close to 70 applicants this year, which was amazing. And we had the participation, we had to select 24. So that is, we usually stay around 24 or 25 for a cohort. And then in the spring, we also do the PLC, which is the Professional Learning Community Speaker Series. And anyone is open and welcome to come to that. We invite back all of our leaders from all of our series. And we have leaders from across the system, usually our executive leaders, and they do a 1-hour talk on a specific topic. And this year we had Chancellor Maduco. We had Dr. Diamond, who's our Associate Vice President, or Associate Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs. We had President Ismaili come this past April 10th. He just came. And then we have Sherelle Mathis coming next month in May to speak to the group. So they come for an hour. It's an open forum. They do a speech about how they got into leadership. And then the participants can ask questions prior to the session or live in the session. And it's been really great for individuals across the system to learn about our executive leaders and how they got to the seats that they got to. Next slide, please. Thank you. The last part of the PD shop, which is something that we did when we worked over in teaching and learning, was the partnership and the workshops and working with individuals from across the system. And this is kind of like the add-on or the added extra. When we do this work, a lot of times campus individuals will call us. I'm having this problem on my campus, or staff or faculty are having these issues on my campus. Could you come do this? Or could we have this individually on our campus? And so Forrest and I often will say, of course, we'll come and help out, or we'll do this to assist your campus with what's going on. So in March, he went and did a supervisor training at Middlesex, and he ran it, and they needed how to run effective one-on-one meetings and evaluation processes for professional development. And there was a 30-person participation group that he ran that for. And then in mid-April, Manchester was looking for a workshop on campus supervisors and administrators, and there's a projected participation group of about 20, and they're looking to get some support for that. We're still waiting on the confirmation for that date. And then he is doing an AI Summit keynote address in late May. He was just invited to talk at that. So there's a lot of extras that come out of the work that was already done to come and do some special one-offs. And he's been really great about trying to acknowledge the needs for some individual campus supports as well. And then the last slide. So the last thing that he does monthly is he's been pulling together anyone within the system that works with faculty. So there's Center for Teaching folks from across the system at Central, Eastern, Western, Southern, and Charter Oak, and CT State. And he brings them together for a monthly conversation One, to share what we're doing at the system office each month, and also to hear what they're doing so that they can share across the system best practices. And it's been a great place for people to connect, share what they're doing. They've exchanged ideas. They've exchanged speakers that they're using on their campuses. They've had in-depth conversations about AI programming and different practices that they're using across the system. So it's been a great sharing place for those leaders on the campuses. And it's also been a wonderful place where they've been sharing resources. A lot of discussion has happened about digital accessibility and the support for faculty right now, especially with the federal regulations. So a lot of great conversation has come out of that particular group each month, and it's been a nice group of folks. I've been joining those meetings as well. And then the last thing he's been doing is academic leader consult and coaching, providing individualized consulting and coaching for leaders about professional development or instructional strategy within their classroom. He does that on an individual basis, and he's done about 10 or 15 hours this semester, and also in the fall with individuals. And excuse me, I'm so sorry. I just need to catch my breath.
Regent James has a hand up.
Regent James, you have a question?
Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, I'm on mute because there's somebody hammering next door. I'm going to let you finish because I have a whole host of questions with every section that you have
That's wonderful.
gone through. So I'll wait until,
these are just some comments, and I'll just leave these comments. But we wanted to share some of the comments. Each of these programs has a so one of the talents of Dr. Helvey, and I'm always blown away by and Jen can attest to this too. One of the things that Dr. Helvey does best is he does pre-evaluations of all our program participants and post. So we ask them what their knowledge is before the session and then what their post knowledge is. And so we have evaluations for all of the professional development that we've done through the system. And then we ask individuals about their experiences at the workshops, what we can do better, because we know some virtual workshops don't always go very well. Some workshops are too big. Some cohorts are too big. Some cohorts people want more dialogue with different campuses or other individuals. And we've gotten some really good feedback that has helped us kind of model and change some of our programs over the years. And so all that feedback has been given to us, but these are just some of the comments that people have given us, which have been really amazing. A lot of people have indicated that a lot of our events are very engaging, and that is always the focus that we give a lot of our sessions, is that the learning is very universally designed so that individuals feel like it goes by fast, it's engaging, they have fun, and that they meet people during that session, because that's a really important thing when you're doing training for individuals. You don't want them to be sitting there waiting for paint to dry. You want them to actually have a good time, engage with other human beings, and learn at the same time and grow in the role that they're in. And the other thing within our system is we really need to be looking to grow our infrastructure and our population of employees, because one day we're going to have several retirements and we need to build our capacity at various levels so that we have a workforce that could be elevated or could be moved to the next level. And we have a lot of individuals in the system that want to learn how to move to the next steps within their trajectory and their careers. So that's really important with these leadership levels and the cohorts that we have within the Emerging Leaders Program. And the Emerging Leaders Program has received 2 national awards, which is also amazing. So these are just a couple of the comments, and we can kind of skip through them, but some of them have been really nice. It's a nice mixture of people, the facilitation, incorporated interaction. I learned a great deal. These have been great. Always good to hear the perspective of others. So with that, I'll leave that. And if we could take down the slides and we can take any questions, I'm happy to answer anything. I'm going to take another sip of water because I feel like I'm going to cough again. Excuse me. Okay.
So you answered my first question, which was, how do you get feedback
Yep.
about all of these different programs and courses. So
Mhm.
that was my first question, and I'm really happy to see that you have a methodical way of doing that, so that you can
Mhm.
constantly refine and improve. By the way, I think all of this is just so exciting and really um, not only thoughtful, but just really exciting to see all of this. My second question has to do with the work you're doing on accessibility, which I also admire. And I wonder, as we do more with early college and dual enrollment,
Mhm.
does that then complicate that particular initiative because you're now going to have students participating in various aspects of our educational program,
Mhm.
but they're not actually going to be um, students necessarily on our campuses. So I was just wondering, future thinking,
Yeah.
how we think about how that complicates, this entire process. And then my third question is whether or not you've thought about having any of the regents participate in your PLC program, because I think that would be fun.
I think that would be fantastic, and
Oh,
I
I
will
like
I
that
will
suggestion.
definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
I that was actually a conversation Forrest and I recently had, and he said, I think that's our next reach out because we've gone through a lot of our presidents and our AVPs, and I said I think we should talk to our regents about the areas that they have worked in and how did they get to be on a board and that kind of stuff. So that was actually our last conversation because he's like,
Yeah.
what's the next, the next round of folks for the PLCs. And then back to the accessibility piece that you just brought up, there's been a lot of dialogue about our dual and concurrent students with our accessibility leads across the system. It's very challenging because the high school accommodations are very different than college accommodations. So
Hmm.
when a student transitions to a university, there is truly less accommodations than they get in high school. A 504 is very different than the accommodations at the college level. They're actually a lot different and they get a lot more in a 504 in high school. And so we are really trying to educate our families about the difference of a college class accommodation letter versus a 504 in high school. And so I know the accessibility leads across the system have been doing a lot of education. And I've done some work with our Connecticut Counseling Association on that specifically when we've been working with Common App and that group. But it's going to take a long time before there's a true understanding because there's so many high schools in Connecticut and so many counselors and they're not at the same meetings. And so it's really, sending out more materials to them, having them understand it. And then if parents aren't reading the materials, that having them understand it too. Because parents really want to advocate for their students, understandably, but they need to understand that they're not going to get the same exact accommodations here that they're going to get at the college level. And they have to be able, in some of our STEM courses, they have to meet the rubrics
Mm.
in order to get certified, aka nursing, aka some of our bio classes, manufacturing. They have to be able to accomplish certain things in classroom settings in order to get certified. And so there can't be modifications because we can't modify something in a hospital and we can't
Right.
modify something in a work environment. And we have to be very upfront with students at the front end when they're applying to these programs to say this is not a modification of curriculum that can happen. And so I think having parents understand that is a longer conversation.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I commend you. I think this is just really innovative, terrific, exciting work, and
Thank you.
you've made a lot of progress. It's really nice to be able to see, because a lot of the work you're doing, we don't get a chance to, have a
Yeah.
chance to be exposed to it. So
I give
thank
a
you
lot
for
of credit to
sharing it. But it's
Forrest.
just
Yeah.
really,
Forrest did a lot
really,
of the heavy
yeah.
lifting of this. So it's a partnership, but
I just,
he did a lot.
Well, I
I,
I
I,
wish we could get our friends in the media to
yeah,
expose this kind of stuff that's going on campus, but
oh,
that's
right.
another topic altogether. So,
Yes. I really commend, this was a great presentation, a lot of information, learned a lot in just that, brief presentation. I really appreciate you. Everything you're doing is on point. Great work. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia.
Is- Any
Regent comments?
questions for Tam?
Any other questions?
Yeah, I like Juanita's suggestion of the regents participating work. And I not only, as a speaker, but I'd also love to sit in on some of your leadership training and supervisor training programs, so that we can better understand, because I'm sure those programs address the day-to-day problems that you see people experiencing. And I think it would be helpful for us to get a front view seat on what people are challenged by day in and day out. So Juanita, thanks for bringing up the idea of more regent involvement. I'd love to see that as well.
Yes, I agree.
I think you have your first 2 volunteers, Tam.
I do. Good to know.
Three.
Three.
Me too. Okay.
Well, and I
All
think
right.
the other really important thing that Tam and I talk about often is sustainability of these programs, and trying to make sure that we're able to keep these offerings going, expand these offerings if possible. Right now we are very fortunate to have been able to secure Dr. Helvey to do this work. But I think we have to probably have some very serious conversations about what is our strategic plan moving forward with respect to professional development. So it's really important to us. It's really near and dear to our hearts. But how do we keep the momentum going?
Thank you for that, Jen. Any more questions for Tam? No? I just wanted to say thank you for approving the motion to endorse the CSU policy on volunteers. I just wanted to add that we will recommend review and approval by the full Board of Regents at the May 2026 meeting. Just wanted to add that note. We're going to go ahead and move this to Jen, and she's going to talk about the business process improvements, which I'm really excited about. Go ahead, Jen.
Great. Rachel, can you share the second slide deck? Perfect. So this is obviously not as flashy or exciting as Tam's presentation. I'll say that right at the get-go. It is near and dear to my heart, and there's a lot of critical work that needed to be done. I think I shared last June when I first met with all of you that I had certain goals and certain things that I wanted to focus on. And operationally, we needed to start to peel back the layers of that onion. And in doing so, I found that we really needed to get back to some basics. Essentially, I didn't want to try to build a house on a broken foundation. There were so many foundational things that we needed to do to set us up for success going forward. And I didn't want to build that house in the wrong order, because otherwise we wouldn't have a stable house to live in. So I don't know, Rachel, can you please advance the slides? So the first non-flashy thing that a lot of people are not going to see has to do with reporting. And we made a very concerted, focused effort to leverage reporting and data analysis to start to improve data integrity, improve transparency, help us to shape processes and revamp processes, obviously to be compliance, and to inform strategic decision making. I added here that I wanted you to see the volume of reports that have been developed in just the past 15 months. I was able to hire a very talented senior business analyst, and he himself has developed 254 reports in just literally over a 12 to 15 month period. This is important because these reports, these operational reports, many of which are, we run them every payroll cycle, or some of them are ad hoc, but these reports did not exist before, or they may have existed but were really not functional, usable. They pulled the wrong data. They were not updated. So this to me was a very basic need of the system office operations, and a very basic need of a lot of our institutions that we interact with. So I wanted to give you just an example. There are certain categories I kind of lumped them in. I didn't want to list all 250 reports here, but I kind of gave you some high level examples. In the system office and HR, payroll and labor relations, my area, we created countless payroll audit reports that did not exist before, countless time and attendance reports that ensure that employees are completing their time cards in a timely and accurate manner, reports on dual employment to be compliant with the state of Connecticut rules on dual employment. We pulled a ton of information for contract negotiations, and as you know, a lot of the demand for this data is they need it instantly. They need it, within an hour. They might need it within a half an hour. But we were able to pull this data to inform our negotiation teams. And we also pulled a lot of information for labor relations and legal as they have been working through various issues, and related to benefits as well. And those are just some broad categories, but there are a huge bulk of reports here that are run on a biweekly basis, a monthly basis, and they do help us to be compliant in what we do. We've also extended our reach out to other functional areas within the system office. Mainly finance. There have been a lot of financial year-end reports that required information on accruals and employee headcounts. So we worked with Annette last year, and I'm sure we will work with her again this year to provide that data. And it's a lot of reports, a lot of detail, but it is needed for the financial reports. And we've also, pulled a number of employee rosters for I guess different use by our functional areas to facilitate their business. We've had a number of requests from CSCU institutions. We have built payroll and timesheet and financial reports for Charter Oak, reports that they did not have before that have helped them to streamline and inform their business decisions. We've also done various analyses for CT State, and of course minimum wage analyses across the whole system. A lot of these requests are ad hoc to solve a certain problem at a given period of time, but many of them are reoccurring or monthly reports that help our institutions do their business in a more effective and efficient manner. I think the fourth category I have here is state, agency, and federal government requests. We receive a lot of requests, whether it's from the legislature, from the Auditor of Public Accounts. We are responding to reports from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Census Bureau reports. This was the first year, too, that the system office participated in IPEDS. So we will have a repeatable process next year when we respond as well. And then the last category I would call stakeholder requests. This encompasses monthly union membership rosters, dues reports, FOI requests, and external vendors that we deal with for long-term disability and the employee assistance program. I did summarize these at a very high level, but I just wanted to give you an idea of the types of areas that we are venturing into with respect to data analysis and reporting. Again, these did not previously exist, or if they did exist, they were kind of done, very last minute on a shoestring, and it was, at least now we do have reports that are maintained. They're repeatable processes, and especially the ones that we do here for HR operations, they are repeatable, they are sustainable, they're comprehensive, and they're predictable. And I think that is going to help us be more compliant with our non-discretionary requirements. So are there any this? I know this is not flashy, but again, I think it's a really important function, and it needed to happen. And I think as we become a more mature, as we mature our business operation, I think these reports are critical. And I also think that, you know, what started to happen is that as our colleagues out in the institutions realize that we have these reports, they've reached out, they've asked, we've developed, we've tweaked these reports and, you know, developed them to meet their needs as well. So I, you know, from a system perspective, I think this has been a much needed thing that probably should have happened years ago, but at least now we're tackling it. Are there any questions on reports? Oh, Regent James.
So more a comment than a question. I actually think this is critical, and it is actually one of the benefits that we haven't really begun to understand of why we created a system in the first place. And this kind of reporting and data information and ability to access and make these reports will actually enhance our credibility as a system. It will help us avoid a lot of the negative press that we have had. And frankly, I was really annoyed because we're talking about audit reports from 2023, and how do we elevate and help people understand that where we are in 2026 is not where we were in 2023. And I just give you tremendous kudos for this, because it's such a critical foundation in terms of what we're trying to build and strengthen as a system, so that we can do a better job of providing the resources and the needs to our students. Because all of this work that you're doing is very time and labor intensive. And to be able to pull this together so that our professionals can focus on innovation and curriculum and all of those other things that are really important part of the core. But you can't do that well if you don't have this. So I would not say it's not as sexy. It may not be as fun, but it's so necessary. And thank you. I mean, this is amazing work. So.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm going to let our business analysts listen to your comments when this is posted online. Yeah, he works very hard.
Yeah, it's great
Rachel,
work.
can you advance the screen or the slide deck, please?
Yep, Regent Wright has her hand up too.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, the only thing that I wanted to say is that I echo everything that Juanita said, but it's a way of memorializing things. And I just want to make sure, and I'm sure you're already there, that irrespective of who is sitting in your position or who's on the team, that this information and what you've put together, that it's not person dependent, because that's where we've run into problems in the past, when it's been person dependent and the person leaves or moves to another job, stays in the system, but somehow, sort of the structure gets lost. So I appreciate all you've done, and this is sorely needed.
I think when we get to the next slide, you'll see how this is becoming how we're going to continue to do business. A lot of the reports that have been written, they're really called queries, and they're set up in Core CT in a way in which these queries can be shared, and these queries can be run by other people. So, hopefully they're not going to be dependent on one individual. We're doing our best also to make sure that the people who run these reports and benefit from these reports and need these reports to do their work, that they have the skills and the step-by-step method to be able to run these reports. Not only run the reports, but run the reports, analyze the reports, know what the outcome, know how to take these reports and transform their business or transform their daily activities based on the information in those reports. Because if they can't run the report and if they don't really understand what the report is telling them, it's not really valuable. So there's a very big people component to this as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So the other foundational thing that I wanted to highlight are two, I picked two operational initiatives that have been, that are pretty significant. And I wanted to highlight payroll. When I came here, we had staff members from different campuses that kind of came together. They had their own way of doing things. There was no cohesive process. There was no, as I mentioned before, it wasn't comprehensive, it wasn't repeatable, it wasn't predictable. And that got us into a lot of trouble, or it introduced risk and liability into payroll, which, as you know, is the biggest portion of our budget. So we wanted to make sure that we are responsible financial stewards of that money. One of the first things we did is develop and implement custom batch processes. And this allowed us to do things in mass, remove a person from having to do data entry in a bunch of different places. We are able to summarize the data, scrub the data, ensure that the data is accurate, and we're able to upload it into Core CT, removing the middleman, removing human error, and ensuring that it can be done effectively, efficiently, save time. And that's really how payroll should be done. It's 2026. We don't really want to have things be as manual as they were. So we created a bunch of custom batch processes. Initially, when I got here, some of these processes were executed by IT on our behalf, which was wonderful. However, I think having it done by the functional business owner, who has a vested stake in the process, really was a much better model for us to be able to ensure that we were doing this in a compliant and timely manner. We also developed and implemented a process for unapproved timesheets. And that seems kind of silly, but timesheets drive pay. And we had a number of unapproved timesheets. We created an automated supervisor notification. So if you're a supervisor and your employee's timesheet remained unapproved, we automated that. It used to be every single payroll cycle, over 40 hours of manual effort by 7 payroll staff members. We have reduced that to a total of 45 minutes every cycle by 1 staff member. And when you look at the number of hours saved annually, and you look at costs, I know this cost was calculated maybe a year ago. It's probably still the same. It actually saves, and this is a very conservative estimate, it actually saves $42,000. I would probably say it's probably closer to 50 or 60. I do believe it was more than 40 hours, and from time to time we had more than 7 staff members working on it. But to Regent James's point earlier, it does free up staff to do other things where it's more value added. Simply, doing a very low level repeatable task is not really a good use of our staff members' time. So that's one that we're really proud of. We took that down from a lot of effort to very minimal effort, and we have a lot more compliance with respect to getting our timesheets approved. We also created a biweekly reconciliation process that proactively catches timesheet and payroll discrepancies. These are standard business reports that are run every single payroll cycle to identify errors or discrepancies before the payroll is confirmed. This has been an incredible tool for the payroll folks because they didn't have these before, and it was manual. It was keeping track of multiple pieces of paper on their desk. It was going through emails. It was very scattered and very manual and labor intensive. So these biweekly reconciliation processes look at those things that are problematic or risky or just not correct. And they do help us catch a lot of things well before the payroll is executed. A kind of a nice thing that we've done for our employees is that we've implemented new earnings codes that provide more detail on employee paychecks. Rather than just seeing a number on your paycheck, now we're able to break it down so that when an employee looks at their pay stub, they can actually see what they're being paid for. We started off with things like faculty overload payments, allied health course leader payments, travel stipends, differential payments. There probably were maybe 10 to 12 payments that we spiked out, and we can keep on working with the Office of the State Comptroller to configure these different types of earning codes. But it's been really nice to hear positive feedback from employees. In the past, they would have to call and say, did I get this payment? Did I get that payment? Right now, it is on their pay stub. They can see what they're being paid for. And it's a nice way to be more transparent about what they're being paid for. And it's easy for us to refer them back to their paycheck to say, yes, you did get your allied health course leader payment in this particular check. So that's been very well received by our employees. And I guess the other big thing we did in payroll is we built a SharePoint site to track our biweekly activities and to manage and store all the files that are critical to having a compliant payroll every single cycle. As I mentioned before, everybody had their own way of doing this. Things were stored on Teams, things were stored on their hard drive, things were just pieces of paper laying around on people's desks. So to have a tool where everything is tracked, where these critical biweekly files are stored, so that the manager can go back and look to see what was done. When we have a request from the state auditors, we can go back and point to documentation. I think that was a foundational thing that was needed in payroll. Now, these things aren't 100% perfect yet. We're trying to get employees using these tools regularly. We're trying to be very supportive, but kind of strict about why these things are needed, just to bring some standardization to their processes and to make it repeatable and have it just be a normal thing that they do on a biweekly basis. So that was in payroll. It's been a major focus and a major lift. We'll move on to other areas soon, but I think these types of initiatives, and there are other things too, but these to me were the big ones that I wanted just to make you aware of. So are there any questions regarding some of the business process improvements in payroll? And if not, I'll move on to the next few things. Regent James?
Just a quick question. Do you have adequate change management resources to manage all of this? Because payroll is like the most complicated, biggest nightmare with 0% tolerance for any kind of error. And when you try, I even wonder, how many payroll cycles do you have? How many different overtime policies do you have? When you try to really manage all of this, do you have the resources that you need to really kind of get the adoption that you need in order to comply with all of this?
So I will say that change management is critically important, period. And there's probably never enough change management ever. And I do think that it's one of those things that can't really be considered a nice to have. It's a must have if you want to be successful. We recently hired a payroll manager who I think will be excellent at change management with the team. A lot of the change management has happened with myself, with the individual I have over HR operations. and with the business analyst who has been developing all of these reports. The beauty of that is that these folks are both technical and functional, and they bring a really unique blend to change management, blend of skills when it comes to change management. They're not just functional, they're not just technical, they can bridge the gap between the two. One of the things I am doing to kind of shore up some of that change management is I have a number of vacancies on the payroll team. I'm going to take one of those positions and transform it into another business analyst who can assist with bridging that gap, someone who's maybe a little bit more functional and a little less technical, to work with staff to ensure that they feel supported and have the documentation they need. But I feel like we are getting there, and we always prioritize change management. In my opinion, there's never enough of it, but I think with the new payroll manager and with adding a team member under our senior business analyst, I think that will help bridge the gap.
Thank you.
Region, right?
Yeah, I'm just going to reiterate what I said before, that making sure that whatever you put together, that it's memorialized, and that, Juanita, you probably can remember this, sort of the larger organizations went through this probably in the 80s and the 90s. So I'm
Yes.
again, just we installed for 60,000 employees PeopleSoft. But what I'm saying is, how do we ensure, again, whether you're still here or whether you're not here, that there is a process that is monitoring the payroll operations. Great to hear that you have somebody who's head of payroll operations, but how do you ensure that we keep current with, sort of how people are paid, how overtime is paid, how we ensure taxes are taken, all those kinds of things. Because without it, it's, this is the line I used to always say, it's an accident waiting to happen.
Right, that's right. Yeah, so I think there are a couple of things. Obviously, the state of Connecticut runs the payroll for the Office of the State Comptroller, does the payroll for the entire state of Connecticut. They also have a lot of these similar reports. There's communication back and forth between our agencies. There are regular training sessions, or Mark Bissoni, who's the head of payroll, he'll have a meeting of all the payroll folks across the state to ensure that if there's a change in the law that affects the system or affects the process, that we as payroll folks at a state agency are aware of what's going on. I also think, we are trying to bring payroll into 2026. I think a lot of the state has already been there. They've kept up with what's going on in the system. They're aware of how Core CT works. They're aware of how to use the application in the best possible way. We were a bit behind, and I think a lot of the payroll folks in our system, not just in the system office handling it for CT State, the system office in Charter Oak, but I think folks at the universities, they crave direction. They crave, can we utilize this technology? They crave knowing how we do things, creating a community and sharing information, making sure we have things documented, and really making sure that we are doing things in a best practice kind of way, and not settling for less than that.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Because this is a compliment to you. You're driving this change. I mean, you're not working alone. You've reached out to a lot of people, but you're driving this change. And I don't know if you can answer this question, but is there a standard for all of the state agencies? I guess what I'm struggling with is how you can have, you know, sort of you have the state payroll department, but how is it that you can have an agency that is so far behind from a technology perspective from where they should be? I guess I'm saying it shouldn't be optional.
Right,
Mm.
I agree.
It shouldn't, it should be an absolute. And you're creating a situation that within the CSEU that there's structure,
Mm.
but again, it's driven by an individual.
Mhm.
And so how can we ensure, and I don't know if it's, you know, I'm not trying to give anybody more work, but how do you ensure that at a state level, there is some level of consistency across organizations and that you don't have one agency or one organization that is falling behind?
That's a complex question. I think there is, obviously the state has, there are laws and policies and there are procedures that from a system perspective we have to follow. There are deadlines, but how that data gets into the system might vary by agency to agency. How somebody enters something on a particular screen may vary from agency to agency. The consistency of data and the way data is configured differs agency to agency. Where we have state bargaining units and where we have employees who are part of those bargaining units that span all state agencies, there tend to be more consistent processes. But where we have our own bargaining units here, or an agency that might have its own bargaining units, you know, similar to us, the University of Connecticut has their own bargaining units. How we choose to approach that work is not going to be standard probably across state agencies. They do provide the system. There are some basic edits in the system. There are some reports that agencies provide, but it really is incumbent upon the payroll professional to be, you know, up to date on what's going on in their field, to be aware of changes in the law, to be aware of tax implications, to be accountable for the work that they do. And that's, some of that is cultural, and it's trying to build a team that this is their job, you take pride in your job, and you know, you live and breathe payroll. So I think some of it is cultural, but there's a mixed, it's a kind of a mixed answer to that question, because some things are controlled by the state or outlined, or there's a framework, whether it's legal or policy by the state, but there is the how do you get it in the system to pay correctly. That piece is, there may be some similarities across agencies, but each agency is ultimately accountable and responsible for getting the payroll done. So I completely hear you, and I agree. How do you build that, keep it sustainable so that who's ever in any of these seats is able to pick up and do it in a compliant way that is really best practice.
Yeah, so it's not person dependent. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
In it's, you know, we're fortunate that you're part of the team, but it does expose, because it is person dependent, it does expose the agency to mistakes.
Right.
Yeah.
It
So
does.
So, Elise, you're bringing up some really critical, and you know, I'd love to have a follow up with Sophia and Jennifer and you,
Sure.
Elise, so that we can really think about how can the Board of Regents be helpful, because these are very big strategic, not only system wide, but you know, there's so many different dimensions to this, and just wondering how we can be more helpful in helping to bring these things to the attention to the right, you know, agencies, authorities, you know, decision makers. I know exactly, you know, you're talking about this. You're right. In the, I guess in the year 2000, I led a global HR, shared services, system-wide initiative to streamline policies and procedures and implement, in our case, an SAP system. And it does take so much coordination, but it takes the support from the top to make sure that once you've built all these processes and policies, that they're enforceable and that people, they stay up to date. And it isn't individual dependent, but it's, much stronger than that. So you're bringing up some really critical things as we look forward and
Well,
move forward.
it's not necessarily we've had some hiccups with payroll that I remember, Jennifer, when you first came on board. So I know we faced some hiccups, but we also faced some tax issues too. Because there was no ill intention. It's that people were doing things in a way that they thought was correct, and in effect, it wasn't correct. And so you run into problems. That's why the more structure you have, the more consistency you have.
That's
You know,
right.
if we have more control within CSCU, then, that's a good thing. I know, but again, when an individual, you have a bunch of experts, if there's not consistency in the way they're handling it, and that's why I'm a proponent of process consistency, you know, eh, and the more we
Yep,
can do that, the better.
I would
agree.
love to have a follow-up conversation. I've got a lot of ideas and I would love to get your feedback and see what we could do to push it even more forward. The last thing we want to do is lose the momentum or take all these wonderful processes that have been built and have us revert to, the state that we were in just a year ago.
Mhm.
All right, so the next initiative that I just wanted to share that I'm really proud of. So CT State has an employee directory, and I know this was very important to the leadership at CT State to get a directory up and live, and the project kind of waned for a little while. We weren't able to get titles. They weren't able to get titles correct. Data was coming in from various different sources, and it when they displayed information, it just wasn't what it needed to be. I got a call from one of their leaders, and they said, "Hey, we know you have resources that might be able to help with transforming core CT data. What can we do to bring the directory live?" Was a phase 1 and a phase 2. So we were able to work with CT State IT and CT State Human Resources. We kind of partnered with them on the last part of this project to help develop custom logic to transform employee data so that the titles that you would see in the directory were more meaningful. There was a lot of testing that happened, and from time to time, we're made aware of various issues, but we were able to utilize this data extract from core to transform the data and get it to where they could make this directory go live. We're currently working, we'll be working with them on phase 2 and any data needs that they have, but it's good because now we have a couple of resources here in the system office that understand core CT, they understand the tables behind the scenes, they understand how the data is configured. And it also, what came out of this is we understand where there are data gaps. We understand where there are inconsistencies. We understand where data is not being maintained in a timely or accurate manner. So by virtue of assisting with this directory, we were able to get a lot more information on, the health of our data in the system. So that was a significant effort. Really, it was CT State's project, but I was glad that we were able to help with that and collaborate with them.
A question, with directories, sometimes it's so much easier with the people who are listed in those directories if they can update the information on their own. Is that
Yes.
possible?
Yes. There are some pieces that individuals can update on their own, but there are other pieces that cannot. We did talk about an individual's title. A lot of employees wanted what I would maybe call a vanity title. They didn't want to call themselves what we call them. They wanted to call themselves something different. So CT State had to make some decisions about what they wanted to display or not display. They did go through a process to solicit information just to make sure that if we identified, here are 10 errors, let's go back and ask either their manager or themselves what this data should be, and then get their correct information back and fix it in the source system so that every time there was a data integration, it would be correct from there going forward. We do have in Core CT, there's the ability to update, an employee has the ability to go in and update some of their own personal information. Probably not some of the information that might appear in a directory, but we are trying to educate employees and have them go out and update information, like their address if it's not displaying correctly. They can update their beneficiaries, they can update their contact information, they can update their educational information. There are certain things that employees can update on their own. I think for the directory, the data elements that were being displayed, really the employee probably wouldn't be able to update some of those things or most of those things.
But
there was
personal
an effort.
information, they should be able to, like phone number, address, office address, all those kinds of
Yes.
things. Okay.
Yeah, and they can do that for sure.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions on the directory? Okay, Rachel, I think the last slide, and I'll try to go through this quickly. So ServiceNow is a cloud-based AI-powered platform that we have and we utilize here in the system office. It's basically used, the two main uses, I believe, for ServiceNow currently are IT requests when something goes wrong with your computer or you need some kind of IT assistance. They're using that particular application so that an employee can log an issue and there's nice back and forth between a technician and they're able to track requests. It's also used for finance when it comes to requesting permission to fill a search, just to ensure that the funds are there and that if a hiring manager is going to refill a position, that the budget line is available. We wanted to use it. We wanted to leverage this existing application for payroll customer service requests, and we're gonna once we get this up and running, we can expand it even beyond this. The beauty of this is that there are licenses that we can utilize that we already own, so this would be no cost to us. We can also utilize in-house technical resources to do the configuration, again, at no additional cost to us. This will standardize the intake of customer service requests, and it will allow us to streamline responses. It will also give me the ability to look at the volume of requests coming in to see how timely we are getting back to employees. We'll be able to take a look at the types of issues that are coming in and the types of questions that are coming in so that we can be proactive in addressing these issues or putting resources out there so that we can be more responsive to employees. This is a project that is in progress right now. I have a couple of staff members working on this. I'm really excited about this because, again, it will relieve us from having to deal with a shared email box with no reporting and no consistency. And I think it will also bring a lot of transparency to management as to what are the types of issues that are regularly coming in. So this is, again, a very robust application that we're able to leverage. And hopefully once we get this piece up, we can continue to leverage it for other workflows. So we're kind of dipping our toe in the pond here. Are there any questions about ServiceNow?
It's great stuff.
And I will keep on trying as we have future meetings to, bring more of these things to the committee so that you're aware of what we're doing.
Thank you so much, Jen. That was awesome. I'm very excited about all the new things that you're doing. Okay, well, before I call for a motion to move to executive session, anybody have any questions for Jen before? Any questions at all? Tam or Jen or anyone? Okay, thank you. Before I call for a motion to move to executive session, let me state that the members of the Human Resources and Administration will move to executive session in accordance with 1200 subsection 6E of the general statutes for the purpose of discussing preliminary drafts of notes. No notes will be taken in executive session. Additionally, there will be no action or votes by the board following executive session. The only remaining item will be to adjourn the meeting. Jennifer Person and Tam O'Day Stevens will be invited into executive session as they have testimony or opinion that is pertinent to the matter and will be in attendance during the discussion of these items. Therefore, allow me to call for a motion to move to executive session for the purpose as I have described above. May I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
A second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Regents Jen and Dr. Stevens, please join the executive session using the Teams link provided.
Okay.
The live streaming is going to be paused.
I just texted Rachel to tell her that we're back. Let me see if I can get Brandon. Oh.
Is everybody back? Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Oh,
Can I
just a
have a,
second, Sophia. I'm so
Mm.
sorry. We just have to go back. We're not live. You guys aren't
You're
live
not
yet.
live yet. Okay. Thank you for telling me that. Thank you.
I'll hop back on. He's messaging me
Folks,
now.
we are live.
We are live now.
Oh,
Thank you.
we are live. Thank you very much. Thank you for the meeting today. I'd like to adjourn the Human Resources Administration Committee of the Board of Regents. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Have a wonderful day.
All right,
Bye.
folks, the
And
live
thank
stream
you so
has
much for
ended.
everything.
Thank you,
Yeah,
everybody. Much
this is a great
appreciated.
meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Have a great
All
weekend.
right. Bye-bye.